Ladies and gentlemen, we've got the next couple of guests here at the ACHL digital event. And again, following on with the theme of from crisis to care and genuine collaboration and initiatives, both these colleagues from the industry have got a big part to play, and they're very eager to explain exactly what they're doing to assist and what they need to make their products more effective. So we have Shahzad Aslam, who's the core cargo product director of Champ Cargosystems, and we've got Lionel van der Walt, president and CEO of the Americas PayCargo.
Thank you for having us, Chris.
All right, so lovely to see you, lads.
Thank you, Chris.
Really appreciate it, and thank you so much for joining us. Just to get started, obviously unprecedented times, terrible challenges, but it's brought the best out of people and the best out of organisations and the best out of regulatory bodies. We've seen some incredible flexibility and speed, and hopefully that's a sign of the times to come. So keeping it on that positive note, as two influential members of the industry, how have the last 3, 4, 5 months affected you personally and also your organisation? So if we start with you, Lionel.
Thank you, Chris. I think it's unprecedented times for the industry. The one silver lining that I do see is that the spotlight has been shone very brightly on cargo and the value of cargo.
Indeed.
Which is something that we've been fighting for many years. So I'm really happy about that. And what that's doing is it's really driving investment into our industry and people paying attention to how do we add more value. From a PayCargo side, as an online payment service, we've seen a tremendous uptick in terms of demand. As people started working from home and they were looking for these contactless payment solutions that will enable their teams to continue business as usual, we stepped up our game to be there. Also bringing in a lot of other initiatives where we immediately understood that there was a bit of a disconnect between the airlines as well as the forwarders in terms of capacity. Airlines were changing their models, forwarders weren't really aware of what was taking place, they were looking for capacity. So we brought in new programs where we were distributing information via our platform to our users. So the airlines were giving us their schedules, we were sending it out as it was changing, and really doing whatever we could just to help the industry to overcome this challenge.
No, that's brilliant. And with the various ghost flights and the short notice changes in schedules, it's been so important for people to, capitalize on their resource and also their planning, equipment, etc. So that type of fast information is crucial. Thanks very much, Lionel. And the same to you, Shahzad.
Exactly as Lionel said, so one of the things from last few months, we have never been so busy as before, actually, funny enough, right? Although most of the fleet is on the ground, but, due to the changes in the schedule, the capacity, variable of the capacity, the more need of ad hoc, because almost every single shipment needs to be ad hoc. And then the ability of the systems to be able to offer dynamic pricing, more integration. So there has been more and more requests coming from our customers. How can we actually digitize more? Because there's a pressure, there's a less human resource available. And at the same time, there are so many things changing, so quick notice. So there is need of more automation, more integration, more digitalization, and that has never been the case. So I think one positive thing from a technology standpoint of view, although nevertheless it has such a big impact on our industry, but one positive thing is it has kind of, in my view, started, and we have seen that kind of digitization, let's say, trigger point in the industry, which is basically becoming more and more need from all the airlines and ground handlers that they need to invest more than before, actually.
Exactly. Now, you mentioned there, Shahzad, about digitization, and obviously that's one of the areas that's been dragging its heels for so long in our industry. And the importance of it now is so obvious. How are you seeing organizations and your customer base responding to that need and the opportunity?
Actually, I think one thing we see now is these days now, organizations are much more realistic and business focused. So previously, digitization was a bit of a marketing thing as well. Everyone wanted to do, whether they really need it or not, whether they really have a real use case or not, and they were not really focusing, not investing. But now it's so business focused, because now organizations are using digitalization to invent the new ways of working. So I give you two very quick examples. We have a customer, for example, in Japan, very big national flag carrier, and they have a big domestic market. Now suddenly what happened, many domestic flights are down, and the things, companies like Uber Freight and things like that in Japan, there are startups like that which are taking quite attention. So what airline wanted is to compete with road transport over there, because Japan is, as you know, it's quite a long narrow strip on the map, and to deliver the cargo from point A to B. So airline wanted to make their capacities, which is quite dynamic, available on the services like kind of Uber Freight kind of services. And what we have to do is come up with APIs and digitization quite quickly, that how we can support that, and airline open a new front of selling, which it never did before. So there have been quite few examples in the handling side, in the, they're more, because of the more spot trade. So the platforms, the portals are also becoming, everyone works from home. So it's more of a trend of online e-commerce is growing. So that actually means the online booking of cargo is growing in our view. And that is actually helping to speed up the digitization, and long pending thing in our industry is taking a bit more priority now, on a focus and on a much more urgency than ever before.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Lionel, from your perspective and your core services, how are you seeing the initiatives and the development there?
We're absolutely seeing the same thing. What's happening here is that this is not anymore just managers or industry talking about digitalization. This has bubbled up now into the boardrooms, right, of many organizations, where they're looking at, how do we use technology to become more competitive, and what's the risks if we don't? Yep. So we're definitely seeing a lot of companies being a lot more strategic when they're looking at, are we going to use these digital programs and technologies? But I think what they're also doing is they're relying a lot more on companies like PayCargo and Champ and other service providers out there to step up to the plate and really help them to get there. They're looking for solutions and the ways that it's being delivered that makes it really easy for them to access it, use it, and get, more importantly, the adoption across their teams, that cultural change that they also need across the workforce.
No, exactly. That's good. Now, Lionel, can I ask you something? With regards to the services that you provide, are you seeing customers look at incentivizing people who either simplify the process for themselves or do things that we've all been talking about for some time? So an example being, and it's something that drives me mad, because every conference, and I think since I started my career, I've been listening to people talking about, not handling documents, et cetera, but for so many reasons, too many reasons, there seems to be barriers to it. But I think now is the time for that change. And the catalyst would appear to be from this crisis with the hygiene element. Now, are you seeing any of your customers look to incentivize through payment process people who do that in a better way and a more effective way?
Absolutely, we're seeing that, and we're seeing, initially what we saw was that if you think about it, on the airline side, and who are our vendors in our portfolio, they were becoming cash strapped, so they were really trying to find opportunities to streamline their operations, yep, improve their cash flow, etc. And then they were speaking to their payer partners, be it the BCOs or the forwarders, and trying to steer them in a direction that they are going to start optimizing using these digital solutions to achieve some of these objectives. But I've also seen now that the same thing's happening on the payer side. And what we're also seeing is that where you have PayCargo as a payment solution that is, you can just go to an online portal and make a payment. People are now starting to look at it, as I said previously, a lot more strategic. So they're saying, how can we use services like PayCargo to help us to take out paper at a lot more deeper level within the organization? So, for example, integrating with their back office systems, so that they can have more central control over cash flow, who's approving what, eliminate checks, vouchers, all of these outdated processes that really hampered the industry for all these years. So I'm definitely optimistic, and I think, within the next couple of months, we're going to see a huge shift within the industry.
Yeah, no, I agree there. And just before I go back to Shahzad, is there any like specific drives that you're seeing? So in the past, we've always had congestion issues, we've had late deliveries, we've had pressures on the last couple of hours before closeouts, we've had, slot problems, we've had all manner of, FOH, freight on hand, not with the correct documentation and details, etc. Again, do you see that there's a big opportunity now to streamline that through a payment system and influencing the services to achieve a better either payment structure, payment schedule, or as I said before, an incentivized price?
Absolutely. So if you look at the import side of the business, our core focus on import is really to expedite the release of cargo. And the way that we do that, especially like with integrations with Champ, is that when somebody goes into our system, if they traditionally just use our standard system, the online portal, they would be entering all the information as a payer, and that could lead to errors, right? Now with the integration like with Champ, basically what happens, we ping the Champ system, it pre-populates the payment data. Yeah. Now it sounds like a simple thing, but it's extremely important because that takes away a lot of your post-transaction discrepancies, etc. It stops any payer from making a payment where the transaction doesn't exist in the system, which helps the vendor and the airline from having all these unidentified transactions. And then also from our side, immediately when the payer approves the payment, they haven't made the payment, they've just approved it, we ping back to the Champ system, and the Champ system immediately notifies the airline staff on the ground that they can release the cargo. So it really facilitates that whole process. And you know what, it sounds like it's about the money with PayCargo, but it's a lot more about the data flow and that transparency and visibility on how can we do business a lot more efficiently and quicker.
Exactly. And do you combine then also with Champ or any other service providers with that data to do the analytics and work out how the efficiencies and productivity and just general improvements can be introduced?
Absolutely. So many of our airline partners come to us to better understand their business. They get it. When they start using us and we start providing them with reports, they are blown away by the amount of information that we can provide them at station level, which they never previously had. And they're using some of this, for example, when they're negotiating their ground handling contracts, etc. So it really brings that visibility. And then if you look at it from a payer perspective, now all of a sudden a payer can see who's got authority to enter a transaction, who's got authority to approve it. Is there a limit per vendor that they want to place in there? So it really gives them so much more control over their operations.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's excellent. Now, Shahzad, I'd like to come, and thanks very much, Lionel. Shahzad, I'd like to come over to you now because I know you've got 3 slides available. So, Salem, if you can just load those slides whilst we're just warming up. Okay, very good, very good.
Yeah. So basically, the key thing, Chris, I wanted to actually highlight what is really important for all the organization and us as a industry to look for opportunities, new opportunities in these difficult times, right?
Yep.
And what we need to think, looking for new business models which never existed before. So how can we reuse existing small IT components. The example Lionel gave, for example, we partners like PayCargo, we work together, and just by API integration, how can we create a new value which never existed before, right?
Yeah, yeah,
With one single organization. So that's the idea, and idea is basically we expose through APIs and we create a new value addition to generate a new business models. And the need of integration, as you have seen in these times, that real track and trace, what's the status, where is the shipment, become more than ever important.
yeah,
And it will become more and more important because very soon we'll have vaccines, right?
yeah.
So more and more vaccines, and then that means really through IoT integration and through visibility is the key thing. And from a shipper to consignee in air cargo, so many organizations are involved: forwarder, import agent, custom, this and that. And integration is the key thing, right? And to making this integration seamless and completely self-service is basically what we are seeing more and more demands coming. And that's why we actually partnered with Google. I did a webcast with Google actually a week ago with one of their VPs, Google Cloud. So we did a Google platform, which is a self-service API platform, API
Yeah.
gateway. And that really helps to actually implement small modules, mobile apps, portal, integrate in-house, integrate to other partners without actually asking champ or champ experts to help us. To make it really seamless and self-service, go to the portal and configure the integration and do the integration yourself, basically, is the
Can I
idea.
ask you? Can I ask you, Shahzad? You mentioned vaccines, and that's going to be the next really big challenge. And please God, it will come sooner than everybody thinks. But when the vaccines come on board now, I believe all parts of the industry have got a huge part to play in the credibility and the security of the call chain. Now, that's from airports, it's from GHAs, it's from carriers. Are you developing anything special that can help with the expected track storage? Because obviously it's going to be a difference, because instead of primarily being on the export side, there's going to be a lot more import storage because there isn't going to be the capacity to distribute quick enough. So are you guys doing anything special with regards to vaccines so that it can support whether or not there's a vaccine commission or a vaccine working force or whatever? Are you doing
Yeah.
something for that?
Yeah. So what we are doing is we have the mobile app which basically provides the events and everything. So what we are doing, the temperature control using that mobile app, and we are not going we are going to partner with existing IoT providers, and what we are working on the APIs basically to integrate with the um, with the existing devices or other partners, where we will get the real-time temperature and that we will populate in our systems, and we will make it available through a REST API that any organization who needs this event can subscribe through a API gateway, and they can get the event, whether it's a alert for a deviation or whether it's a recording of the temperature or anything like that, updating the shipment. So we are basically working on the APIs for that purpose, but not actual hardware.
Okay, right. Do you want to take us to the next slide?
Sure. Okay, so that's what I was talking about, basically taking it to the next level of ecosystem. We have multiple products and working with partners and having products from other organizations, because one airline use products from many different IT companies, not only one IT company. They have in-house systems as well. So the idea is basically we expose all the endpoints, and we have implemented recently, as I said, Google Cloud, which is basically an API platform. So what it does, it allows an airline to expose their capacities online, to allow airlines to have an online ad hoc system, to have the real-time availability, to allow the airline basically, I give you example of a handling. We have a handler, a very big customer in US, Alliance Ground Handling, and they came up that they want to recently update the way skill information into systems. So we said we are not going to develop any interface, right? So we basically use the existing APIs, and we gave them the APIs, and they were really able to integrate that through, within 5 days to do the proof of concept and to implement into UAT, which was great. So basically the idea is, we reuse everywhere. We ask customers to reuse because they can't invest into new technologies. They already have systems, they already have functions. So how can we transform them technically, turn into reusable APIs, which could be a very small and and quick time to market and less investment, which can help the customer. That's the idea behind it, basically.
Okay, now Shahzad, something that, and poor old Lionel there is watching and listening and waiting. Sorry, if you can go back to the previous slide, please. Okay, now 3 very important tick marks there. Accelerating digitalization. We all know that's a must, a big must. Self-service integration. That needs to be as simple as possible. And obviously improving time to market is so important. Now, when I was with Lufthansa, I had to learn German. And I was trying my best and trying to understand it. And I learned more about the English language through learning German with the various accusative, nominative, dative, and the structure. But I just wasn't an expert at it. Then I lived in Spain, the same sort of thing. Now, there's something that I get so frustrated with when I speak to IT guys. They are so good at what they do, and they are so knowledgeable and so immersed in their specialist subject that they forget that there are not only super users, as they've been called, who become in-house experts, but the ones I feel sorry for are the practical users. And sometimes that level of feet on ground, sleeves rolled up and sweat seems to get missed out. And then people have the perception that an IT system has got so much in there, but it's like having a wardrobe of clothes that you never wear. And you always go to your old favorites.
Correct.
How are you ensuring that there's more of a practical benefit to people on the ground rather than the theory and the principles that are so well versed between IT experts within the service provider and the customer?
That's really well said, Chris. And actually, one other industry which is really taking off during pandemic, other than e-commerce and stuff like that, is e-learning. And we have more requests than ever before, something we call Champ Academy, where instead of, users to exploring the procedure, how to do user manual and things like that, we're what we call a flipped classroom. It's a scenario based, basically, where you go through a course that how I need to accept a shipment at a given station with regulation. You attend that course through a system, and once you pass it, it takes automatic test, it gives you scenario based questions, and when you do that, that makes your life so simple. So this because these days nobody can do physical training, right? It's not possible. Classroom training is gone. So this is the three areas where from a Champ perspective we see so much more demand than ever before. Is an online courses, Champ Academy, that we call it. Mobile apps that we have, we've never had such a high demand than ever before. And the APIs, where is the integration? These 3 things are more than ever before.
Shahzad, sorry, my friend, I've got to stop you while you're in the fast lane there, because we've got to include Lionel here again in something. Lionel, there's something that I'd like to ask you, which we'll come to once we look at the last slide. So if you can be thinking about it. There is an absolute flood now of online training and online offers and online promises. My fear is that the majority of it is not up to standard. It's not regulated. There's no criteria for it. And there's an awful lot promised, but not a great deal delivered. So the question I'm going to ask you after we finish the next slide is how do you think that can be better controlled and better delivered? So now back to you, Shahzad. If you can just go to the last slide and very quickly just take me through that, because it's basically things that we've covered already. So
Correct,
what I want to hear from you
So
is that you're working on very simple build and use modules, not
correct,
complete jigsaw.
correct. So basically, right, instead of updating the paper, instead of how can because the other thing is, due to reduction of the people in the warehouse, you want customer want instant update, and then you also want to quickly finish the job, right? And there is quite a pressure. So this mobile app, as I said, so I had the biggest handlers and the major customers at the moment are doing evaluating as a pilot in their stations.
Yeah,
It's basically allows you to all the processes that you have to do, starting from acceptance and security and build up, and
yeah,
whether it's a pallet stack or whether it's a
yeah.
pallet
Shahzad,
offload import.
Shahzad, let me jump in there now, because what I'm just going to do now is I want to ask you some questions rather than
Sure.
receive the sales pitch. With regards to that app, the parties who are responsible for filling it in or updating it, are they being recognized by the app, so they have to put their PIN in at all times before they can update it, so to make sure that it aligns with competency and training? Is that correct?
That is correct. So
And of
that is
course,
correct. You have to add, just like any other app, you have to log in, and you have to put your PIN or thumb, or you have to go into that, and it recognizes.
okay, very good, very good.
Because it's iPhone, Android, you can
Yep,
put it anywhere. It's a very modern app. So, and the key thing is, you see, it's not, what I
Shahzad,
wanted to highlight is the side benefits that industry need to explore, not the actual itself that we are doing.
yep,
It's
Shahzad,
basically, yeah,
Shahzad, I love you to bits, my friends. Okay,
sure, sure.
and if it was talking tennis, it would probably be 40 love by now. So just save it, please. Okay.
I'm enjoying my gin and tonic here, Chris.
Yeah. I think you could pull one of those.
That's what I am missing here.
You could have a read of the book, Lionel. Dad, listen. Let me just go to Lionel now. So if you can bring the screen back so that we've got your wonderful pictures and faces on the screen. Right now, Lionel, the question I gave to you.
So before I get to the question, I hope you don't mind. I want to grab my little pound of flesh based on what was just presented now. And just to add on that, I think one of the key things that we've always missed within the industry is trust.
Yep.
I think we need a lot of more trust and open collaboration between stakeholders.
Yep.
And I think what really works here, and the work that we do with Champ, and we do this with IBS, we do it with Unisys, Celia. We basically consider ourselves a bit of a Switzerland in that sense, and we connect with everybody. But the key benefit here is, if you look at our payer network, we've got 19,000 plus payers, and then you bring Champ or Unisys or IBS or anybody with their vendor networks, these ecosystems, by connecting them and then making this technology easy to access for those stakeholders, I think is a huge benefit for the industry. Plus, you have one partner potentially that you work with and you find a new solution, right? Then that solution can be brought to the marketplace for all the other partners across these networks, which once again speeds up this delivery and bringing it to the marketplace and adding that value for everybody across the whole value chain. So I think that is very important. And I also just wanted to touch on the point that you talked about, the people on the ground. I think a lot of times they are overlooked. And I think strategically, it's not about at the end when you have to take them into consideration. It's at the start of the process. So when you look at PayCargo and the way that we do things, we speak to C-suite. We look at what they're trying to achieve. But we also got boots on the ground where we're going into the stations and speaking to the actual users. And now in times of COVID, obviously, it's calls, right? And we're talking to them, trying to understand what are the pinch points that they are feeling on the ground and how do you address that? So if you don't do that, if you end up being like many companies and many associations where you think you know what people want and that's what you're delivering, you miss the mark, right? So you really have to build that in from the start. And that brings me on to the question that you had. I think it's critical. I think the role of associations, be it IATA, be it FIATA, be it TIACA, are critically important. What worries me right now is that obviously with COVID and with the industry in a real bad place, their revenue streams are being impacted. They're letting go of staff, they're letting go of expertise at a time when their support is most critical. And I understand also that they got budgets that they need to manage. But I think we need to be very careful about how we do this. And back to the collaboration point, I think these associations need to be coordinating amongst each other.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember back a couple of years back, there was this wonderful acronym. I think it was called GACAG, which is sort of a mouthful. I don't know. and you know, I think we need to be going back to periods where all these people are talking about and addressing, you know, the distribution of vaccines is coming up.
Yeah.
How are we going to manage that? I think the cargo industry is going to step up, and we're going to be the hero in this, really helping the world to have these vaccines distributed. But there's a lot of challenges, and people need to be talking to each other and working together to resolve them.
Yeah, no, and I think again, I 100% agree, and sometimes it's a little bit like being in a band, you know. Yeah, people aren't satisfied with being a good drummer or a good bass guitarist or whatever. You know, they always think the only one who gets noticed is the singer. And, you know, sometimes it's much more commercially beneficial to be the one who writes the songs. And I think everybody needs to get together, sing the same song, and remember the practical people are the ones who normally pay the bills, and they're the ones who need to know how to do things. So I think that's really
absolutely.
Now, the point I was making earlier. Do you want to cover that?
With regards to the education and, you know, online training, etc. Absolutely, and I think it goes, you know, from our side, we're doing the same thing, and as the other companies, we've got a lot of online videos now helping our stakeholders to understand what they need to do, how to get the best value out of these systems. But, you know, if you look at it from a bigger perspective, more strategically, once again, I think the associations are the ones that can really add a lot of value here. Yeah. I think if you have a look at, they've already got these departments set up. It's just really paying attention to what is needed and then making those investments. But it is coming at a time where even the associations are having a lot of challenges to face. So can they deliver on that? But standards are crucial. And this is one thing where IATA has done a great job with One Record. I know One Record has been very, theoretical in a sense, but there are practical implementation pilots that are being run right now out of Heathrow, and PayCargo is starting to get involved in those. And I really think that this is where the investment needs to be for the future of the industry.
Yeah, 100%. And also, where people are doing similar things that support each other, it might be prudent now to consolidate and have one party taking the lead and being supported by the others, instead of everybody going in that same on the same highway or pipeline.
Absolutely. And why reinvent the wheel? I mean, I look at I keep on talking about ecosystems, air cargo, the cargo community systems.
Yeah,
I think they are crucial, and I like the way the US has been way behind in terms of implementing these. I've even heard some people arguing that they are of no value, which amazes me. But what I do like, the approach that's been taken in the US, is that the airports here are partnering with cargo communities that have already been established in Europe, so that they can expedite that learning, and then they're creating these trade lanes, obviously, that delivers a huge amount of benefit for the industry. So really, once again, it's trust, being willing to work together for the bigger good of the industry.
Yeah, no, well put. And Shahzad, on that note, something I think we spoke about a long time ago was the ever required or the ever demanded role of an airport to look after its own community and ecosystem and lay down certain guidelines and prerequisites and enforce them.
Correct.
And now more than ever is we've spoken to other people, and we were talking about carrot and stick and feather duster. For me, it's a common sense baseball bat. Get it done in times of need. You need to act quickly, be precise, and make it happen. not all this debating and, you know, and considering. You've got to get it and make it happen. And I think airports have got the chance now to do that.
It would be quite interesting, actually, how airports play their role in this whole situation. Obviously, they are the one who can make the whole chain more. Let's say they can help everyone in this situation. But so far, I think we, at least from our side point of view, there has been little bit activity on on airports. But to be frank, airlines and the ground handlers are taking the lead to trying to do it on their own, all of these things. So I think there is much more to do from airports perspective, in my view. They need to.
Can I stand up for the airports here, Chris?
Sure.
I agree with you that I think the airlines and ground handlers are doing a huge amount of work, but I'll also stand up for the airports. You know, when I work with a team at Miami International or Atlanta, you know, these airports are definitely, they're out there, they understand, and they're starting to focus on cargo. But you are right, when you look at cargo as part of the airport business model, but frankly speaking, you look at it as part of the airline business model, cargo was the black sheep of the family until recently. Right? So that's one of those silver linings of COVID. And I think it's driving the focus on air cargo at the airline side and at the airport side. So I'm optimistic. I think people are starting to speak, and the airports are starting to pay attention to this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll be talking with Miami Airport and Atlanta, and we know them very well. So we'll be covering them as well in another session. But I'm not trying to give them a hard time. What I'm trying to suggest is that if GHAs and carriers welcome a more direct and a more involved and a trustworthy experience from the airports, the whole tripartite collaboration could become much more effective by being very direct. So I think it's a matter of, you know, it's like in rugby. You know, if you've got a raw half and you give him stick, he's going to worry about whether to pass it or he's going to put it. But if he's full of confidence.
And Chris, one thing, you know,
very decisive.
Yeah, Chris, one thing that you remember, you always say that we all do the same thing, but everyone thinks that their way of doing is perfect, right? They all have their own way of doing it, right? And this is crucial when it comes to airports, right? Because they are the one where we can get the standardization. Because if every airport is going to try to do their own way of working, right, and their own little procedure and their own little setup, that is what is not going to help us in this situation, right? So this is the standardization is much more, and that's why I was discussing airports' role to play, is the need of standardization is much more in this local and airport community than in any other segment, in my personal view.
I think we've got some partnership airports who are going to do sessions with us showing how they're working together on certain pipelines and making people confident that there's a consistency and a capability out there between everybody. So, you know, I agree, Lionel, I agree, Shahzad, it's positive, and some of these barriers and hurdles that were there before us have now been removed. So, you know, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Now, before we come to an end, what I'd like you both to do, please, is to consider what 3 positive support activities you would give to the supply chain to help the supply chain be more effective and more innovative. So I'd like to start with you, Lionel. What 3 things from your personal and your organization's viewpoint would you be willing to commit to?
So once again, I'll talk about what we're doing in terms of sharing information across our network. We've got this broad ecosystem that we've created on the payment side. So we welcome anybody within our network who needs to share information, to speak to us. We've done that for numerous stakeholders already, so that's there. We also consider ourselves to be a really open and collaborative company. So anybody that needs or thinks they've got a great idea on how we can benefit the industry, come speak to us. We're more than willing to talk with you about how we can do this together, create these integrations to deliver that value. And that's also why we get involved with projects like One Record, where you do not have, you don't have cash return on that immediately, but it's not about that. It's about how do we secure the future of the industry. Yeah. And then obviously, I think the other big part that we personally can play is being champions for the industry, doing what I just did now for the airports. I don't work for an airport, but I think overall we really need to stand up as a united industry. This thing that we tend to, airlines are pointing fingers at ground handlers at the airlines, and then at the airports. I think that's, if we want to succeed and we want to get through this and we want to create this really sustainable industry, we need to be collaborating, working together, singing off one song sheet, as you said, bringing those standards and then working together with one objective. And that, I think, is really, really key.
No, indeed. And same question to you, Shahzad. What three things on a personal and an organisational perspective would you commit to help the supply chain?
Yeah, the first thing, Chris, which we are doing in this and quite committed to do, the need, as I said in the beginning, the need of integration is more than ever before. And we are going to make it much more seamless than before and much more quicker than before. And that's why we invested in the API Gateway platform, where it would be much more easier. And if airlines are going to invest into new things, new business models, and integration is a need, we will make that happen, number one. Number two, what we're going to do is the critical IT projects which have not been, which the boards and the airlines have been managed to get approval that they are still important and they still need to go. We are quite committed to make sure we do it more efficiently than before, because we now have a quite trust from senior management of the organizations and the board and investment that in difficult times they're still investing. That means they still need digitization. That means for our responsibility to commit to that, to make it, to deliver that as promised, is much more critical than before. Yeah. And the third thing is collaboration, which Lionel also mentioned is the key thing for us: information sharing and collaboration. We also started something called Cargo Insight, because we have so much data for so many airlines and so many ground handlers in our system. So what we have started to do, can we get this data and try to make some trends out of it? And we are actually sharing the first version of that as a free of charge with all our community, all the customers, that if they want to see how the trend looks like. So these are the few things, three things that you mentioned. We are quite keen to do and committed to do. Yeah,
Chris, if I may just jump in, I think the one thing that you mentioned there is that it's free. I think that is so crucial in this time within the industry.
Yeah.
Everybody, be it on the forwarder side, be it on the airline side, the ground handlers, the airports, everybody's hurting right now. And that's why I think, companies who are doing well during this period need to step up to the plate. I mean, I'll give you the example. We do not, be it on a pay or vendor side, integrations, we don't charge anybody anything. We do that at our own cost, because we understand that we need to be playing this bigger role to help the industry right now. So it's great to hear other companies who are doing the same thing.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the areas which is so positive, identifying FOC services, because you don't hear that much in the old days, and it's amazing that you hear it now, and hopefully, like you said as well, Shahzad, help us all to help ourselves.
Correct.
That's the only way everybody will get through this as effectively as needed. Now, Lionel, back to yourself. What three things would you like to see coming from any part of the supply chain, whether it be representative bodies, whether it be regulators, whether it be governments, airports, customers? What three things would you like to see coming to you that would help you be more effective?
Well, one of the first things is that I'd like to see, and I think it's already, that trend has started, is government bodies paying more attention to air cargo and really understanding the value of the role that we play. And that could be central government or local government. Air cargo facilitates economies. right? So where people really need to understand that, and the governments need to be bringing in the right investments for the airports to be able to do the things they need to do. So that's one piece for me. The other piece is that we help ourselves. We've been fighting amongst ourselves for far too long within this industry, and I've mentioned it a couple of times now. I think trust is key, and we need more collaboration where people are really willing to, open up the books and let's see how can we work together to do better for the industry and create that sustainable future for everybody. And then thirdly, to the point that you raised earlier, I also mentioned it, I'd really like to see the associations stepping up more and coming together and working together to bring solutions for the challenges that we're going to face down the line within the next 3 to 4 years. The distribution of the vaccines. I know TIACA is working on stuff, FIATA is working on stuff, IATA is working on stuff. But are these people really coordinating together to bring that one vision for the industry that can deliver the result that we need? I'm not so sure. So I would like to see the associations stepping up to the plate and really doing more there.
100% agreed there, yeah. And now back across to you, Shahzad, please. Your three
so the three items that would really help, Chris, is standardization, which we discussed, is really important in these times, because we really need to come up with a very standard and seamless way of working. Reusability, we need to be open instead of inventing new ways. We need to of procedure for no reason. We need to be more lean, and we need to look for existing reusable pieces and not try to, as we discussed, reinvent the wheel. Try to reuse something which is there, orchestrate it in a different way instead of reinventing from the beginning, right? And the third thing is open relationship, which Lionel mentioned as well. If you really think that the project is in trouble, be open with us, transparent, working together spirit. Let's see how we can save it, and let's see how we can work together to ensure we made a difference. Is basically the key thing. Yeah.
Very good. Right, gentlemen. Okay, now before we finish, is there any particular segment or party or areas within our industry that you'd like to call out, give a shout to or recognize for the positive initiatives that they've taken on board, or the way they've rallied round? Anybody from your side, Lionel?
Well, I think in general, the people on the ground are the people, they're the real heroes within our industry. The ground handlers there, who are now all of a sudden having to deal with loading and unloading, passenger planes, which they never previously did. They're not necessarily trained on. And if you look at, the amount of cargo that's moving right now through some of these airports, it's a huge challenge. So for all of those people on the ground, I really take my hat off and salute them, as well as, we would not have an industry today if it wasn't for the medical staff out there who are looking after everybody and keeping everybody healthy and safe. So yeah, I think those are just two examples. There's so many people, our thoughts go out to the small businesses, the small forward partners out there who are really struggling right now, and we all need to be working together to help those. And then lastly, you've just seen big announcements of the airlines, and it's the ground handlers have had the same thing, etc., where they're laying off or furloughing thousands upon thousands of industry people. My prayers go out to those people, and I truly hope that once we get through this, those great people will be brought back into the fold.
Exactly. Very, very well said. And for everybody, it doesn't matter the size of the boat or the size of the ship. We're all going through the eye of the storm together, and it's gonna get a little worse before it starts to subside. So Shahzad, anyone you'd like to call out?
All the key workers in our industry, which has been actual doers, and that belongs, to make a shipment from point A to point B. Everyone plays the role, right? So whether it's a forwarder, or it's an airport, or an airline, or a ground handler, or all other departments, actually flight scheduling department, people who are not even in cargo. We heard from airlines that their passenger departments and flight operation department have worked more than previously with them, and they have So everyone who has in these difficult times helped to make it, help the society, help the, countries that, and the medical, supplies and all of that. We all salute them, and that is great achievement.
Yeah.
From our industry, it is great achievement. It shows how critical is our industry. It also shows that we have a life-saving and key role to play, right? The industry which cannot be shut down, even in a very difficult times when everything is closed, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, tough times don't last. Tough people do. So hats off to everybody. Thanks to the two of you as well for your points, your comments, your determination to make things as simple as possible and to help those users, the guys on the ground, the practical users, not just the super users. And, with help from guidelines, most common issues, FAQs, checklists, help with risk areas, self-assessment, storylines, etc. All the help us to principles that you guys can technically and digitalized way, you can make life a lot easier for everybody. So thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And
likewise.
see you all
Thank
soon.
you.
And maybe Lionel, if the Lions tour takes place, be a great place to hook up.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank
Take care,
you.
lads. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Player.
Stay safe, stay well, and good luck.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Bye bye.